All right, let's all give our attention to Jordan and his speech on Abraham Lincoln.
I will say then that I am not, nor ever have been in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races, that I am not, nor ever have been in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold public office, nor of qualifying them to intermarry with white people. And I will say, in addition to this, that there's a physical difference between the white and black races, which I believe will forever forbid the two races from living together on terms of social and political equality. And inasmuch as they cannot so live, while they do remain together, there must be the position of superior and inferior, and I, as much as any other man, am in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race. Abraham Lincoln, 1858. From a young point in our lives, we are taught one side of history. We're taught the winner's side. Today I'm going to give you guys a glimpse into something that you've never heard of before, and you probably will never hear of again. I became very interested in this topic about 3 or 4 years ago when I was introduced to it. And ever since that point, I've read many articles, many books, many pamphlets, and tried to find, I guess, my own truth to find out if what I'm about to tell you is the truth, and it indeed is. Today, we're going to be discussing 3 main points talking about the dark side of Abraham Lincoln's presidency. We're going to be discussing his personal views on slavery, as well as the tyrannical and unconstitutional acts he committed while our president. We're going to be discussing the real reason that the Civil War was in fact fought. It was fought over the right of secession, and whether it's in fact an American principle or not. And thirdly, and most importantly, we're going to discuss the reason that the South wanted to secede from the Union. Now, to truly understand the dark side of Lincoln's presidency, we first must understand his personal views towards slavery. I chose to stay away from more of the quotes and go the route of physical evidence, should we say, for his support of slavery. The first point is, in 1850, while part of the Illinois Congress, Abraham Lincoln actually voted for the Fugitive Slave Act. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's an act which helps send runaway slaves from the South back to the South if they escaped to the North. He cited an owner's right to own and retain their property when he supported this act. Now, when he was president, he created the Emancipation Proclamation. What a lot of you don't know is that the Emancipation Proclamation actually didn't free any slaves at all. Very simple reason why. Lincoln only freed slaves in states he had no military jurisdiction to do it, and he didn't free them in places that the Northern military occupied and could free them. Now, his own Secretary of State, William Seward, actually mocked him on this issue. William Seward said, "We show our sympathy towards slavery by freeing slaves where we have no power to do so, and by not freeing them and holding them in bondage where we have the power to set them free." That was his own Secretary of State. So the Emancipation Proclamation didn't actually free any slaves. It was a military tactic for Lincoln to cause chaos in the South, believing that it would help him win the war. The third point is his suspension of habeas corpus, or the right of due process. During the Civil War, Lincoln suspended habeas corpus. He imprisoned hundreds of Northern newspaper editors and Northern citizens who had spoken out against the war and for the South's right to secede from the Union. He imprisoned them without a trial, without due process, and until after the Civil War. Now, looking at these points, you must ask the question, okay, but was the Civil War fought over slavery? Well, let's ask Honest Abe himself. My paramount object in this struggle is to save the Union and is not either to save or to destroy slavery. If I could save the Union without freeing a single slave, I would do it. If I could save the Union by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. And if I could save the Union by freeing some and leaving others, I would do that as well. But what I do towards slavery and the black race in general, I do only because I believe it will help in saving the Union. Now, what this quote proves is that Lincoln's goal in fighting the Civil War was not to end slavery. It was to stop secession. So we have to ask the question, is secession an American principle? Now, the first point when talking about secession being an American principle, we must ask, how was our country founded? Our country was founded by us seceding from Great Britain. And our founding fathers actually agreed on this point. It was Thomas Jefferson who said, if any state will declare that it prefers separation to a continuance in union, I have no hesitation in saying, let them go. Now, one of our big points when we seceded from Great Britain was taxation without representation. You guys have all heard that in history class. I want you to remember that because it's going to become vital here in a few minutes. Now, another huge point when talking about secession was asking the question, is it really needed? When you talk about the Civil War, slavery had actually been peacefully ended in 11 different countries between 1813 and 1854, and many more after that. No country besides the United States fought a war over this issue. We were the only ones. Now, to truly understand the dark side of Lincoln's presidency and what actually went down, we have to understand why the South wanted to secede from the Union. And it had nothing at all to do with slavery. It had to do with, like most things in government, with money. According to Thomas J. DiLorenzo, the author of the book, The Real Lincoln, before the Civil War was fought, there had been what they call a moral tariff or protectionist tariff that had been placed on all imports and exports in the United States. This tariff adversely affected the South because of their exportation of cotton and tobacco. Now, it is estimated before the Civil War was fought that the South paid 87% of all federal tax revenue, 87%, despite having less than a third of the nation's population. A third of the nation, 87% of the taxes. Now, most people would say, well, why didn't they just change the law? They only had a third of the population. They couldn't change the law. North held control of Congress. Taxation without representation. Now, they warned Lincoln that they were going to secede from the Union if this wasn't changed. And Lincoln's response to them was, we're not going to change it. He couldn't change it. The country would have gone broke. They were providing that much tax revenue. Now, another thing to keep in mind with this issue is that Lincoln was an avid follower of Henry Clay's American System. What an American system is it's an ideology that promotes federal centralized government over decentralized state government and promotes federal intervention into private enterprise and redistribution of wealth. Lincoln basically believed that the central government, the federal government, should be first, and that the states should do what the central government tells them to do. Now, today we have just skimmed the surface of what I like to call the Lincoln myth. But remember that there are always two sides to every story. We've discussed Lincoln's personal views towards slavery, as well as the tyrannical actions that he committed while he was president. We've talked about the right of secession, and that it is in fact an American principle. And most importantly, we've discussed the real reason that the South wanted to secede from the Union. Now, most of you would say that Lincoln freed the slaves, but I say Lincoln promoted slavery by enslaving every American citizen to the worst possible master, the United States federal government.